I'm Virginia Flaherty, and this is my husband.
I'm John Flaherty, and together we run Central Coast Outdoors.
Do you remember when we came out here on Christmas morning and we had Kinley, our daughter, and the dogs, and we had everybody in kayaks, and it was a really cold day, and we saw all of those amazing flocks of sandpipers doing their banking off in the distance and their white flashes. And do you remember that?
In and around Morro Bay, there are often up to 200 different species of birds in the wintertime that are here. And it's a major bird watching hotspot, international hotspot. You know, we were talking about, you know, the surprises and the things that you see on the bay, and sometimes when a wildlife comes up, particularly the marine mammals, sea lions or harbor seals, they'll pop up really close to the boat and they'll just look at you. And it's the darndest thing. It's almost like you're in their home and they're saying, "Hello, visitor. What are you doing here?" And you go, "Hi."
Those big black liquidy eyes.
Yeah.
You definitely have that feeling of connection. They probably don't, but you do.
They're wondering, who is this person in this plastic thing again?
Yeah.
Into my house. The bay is just filled with so many interesting things. One of the things that I really like is that we have active oyster farming going on out in the bay. And the two organizations that are out there, we know quite a bit about the Grassy Bar Oyster Company. George Trevelyan, I believe is his name, is out there. And he is a wealth of information. I've gone to talks that he's done. Every time we do tours and he's out there, we stop over at the oyster farm and listen to what he has to say. And it never ceases to amaze me. No matter how deep he's got his hands in the muck or doing whatever, he's going to stop and take the time and explain and answer any questions. And he's also been known to offer oysters to some of our clients on the tour. We never expect it, and I never ask, but sometimes if he's in the appropriate mood, he will. But it's really interesting that you can have a productive aquaculture situation like that mixed in with a nationally recognized estuary and all this incredible wildlife. It makes it that much more, you know, rich and diverse, I think. To really sum up, for me, I think that in such a small area, it is incredible what you see here in Morro Bay. And I think I just have to go back to the fact that there's so much wildlife here. It is so diverse. I've traveled all over the world, as has Virginia, and it's incredibly rare to find this combination. Not only culturally with the small towns, but everything else, the wildlife, the changing situation, and just what you can see and do here. It's just really, to me, an incredibly unique and special place.
And I think one of the great things about this area is that because it's kind of it hasn't quite been discovered, or it's just being discovered by people from the Bay Area and people from LA, and tourists from Europe are starting to come here. So it's a relatively new discovery in California, and because it's taken so long, people have learned to appreciate places like this, and we aren't getting that overdevelopment that they're getting in some other places that once may have looked like this.
The name of my farm is Grassy Bar Oyster Company, and we named it that because of the oyster beds when we took it over, were fringed by eelgrass. You know, when we started in 2009, there was lots of eelgrass in those little tidal channels that surrounded the oyster beds, and elsewhere also, all throughout the bay. And it slowly disappeared, and nobody really knows why. Yeah, it's a mystery. I think that people at the Estuary program are working on it. The oysters play a critical role in keeping the bay clean because they're filter feeders, and so they pump a lot of water through their systems, and they are feeding on phytoplankton, which are the small single-celled plant cells in the water. We don't feed or put anything in the water except the baby oysters and their protective pouches. Yeah, so I love working with the Estuary program. I'm a proud mutt mitts operator. I keep a couple mutt mitts dispensers full. Those are the doggy bags for picking up your dog poop and disposing of it properly. If you're a dog owner who loves oysters, you should be using your doggy mitts all the time. We have a lot of critters out here, lots of harbor seals, and we have occasional sea otters back here that cruise around. They don't bother the oysters for some reason. You would think they would be after them, but the oysters are protected in these tough mesh pouches that protect them from predators. Things are getting better. There's much more awareness of water quality issues in the bay, and people are doing more to protect the water quality. We have a sewer treatment plant going in Los Osos, and we have people are picking up after their pets now, and boat owners are being taught to make sure that they don't dump into the bay and to keep it clean. And so there's much more awareness of water quality and keeping the bay clean. And the National Estuary Program has been huge in promoting that and educating people. And so really, that's been a big plus. That's one reason I'm here, is because of the Estuary Program.
I did get involved with the Friends of the Estuary when it first came into being, and that was in 1989. Because I do photography and I write, I got into supplying them with photographs, etc., for the various projects that they were doing at that time. And that grew into working with the NEP, doing the same thing. I have a photograph that's in one of the publications that we did for the NEP, and it shows shorebirds. So it shows every shorebird that comes here, from the biggest shorebird to the teeniest little least sandpiper. It's really it's the diversity of that is unbelievable. That's what really, that got to me. I mean, the first time I went out in a kayak and saw that, it was like, hallelujah. I was in bird heaven. I really enjoy, being able to get out here and see what's going on with the birds, and there's always something different. So it's January, and it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I take my kayak, and I go back to Pasadena Street in Los Osos, and I go out because I want to get all the marbled godwits and the little seabirds, little sandpipers, and I figure I have 20 minutes. And I have to get off the water because it's going out. Click, 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 click. I'm having a good time, and I'm in heaven, obviously, because I turned around and you know what? The sun's going down. And I thought, oh, now what am I going to do? I got to get in. I got to get out of this. I'll be here for 6 hours or more. So very stupidly, I hop out of my kayak. And I'm in the mud, and I'm going down, and I have this cute hat, and my camera's in my kayak, and I'm thinking to myself, tomorrow they're going to find my little red and white kayak, they're going to find my little hat floating, and they're going to see these wonderful photographs on this camera, and I'm gone in this mud. So I wrenched myself up out of that mud, got back into the kayak. Now I'm freezing and it's getting dark. A lady came along walking her dog. Thank you, God, that people walk their dog. Have a whistle on me. Blow my whistle. Get somebody. So the next thing I know, I'm waiting, and out comes the South Bay Fire Department with a big light. Now, you have to understand that this time I was semi-employed, taking people out on tours to see birds. They get Chuck from Depth Perception, the diver. He puts his suit on, he gets a boogie board thing, he boogies out to me, and I knew him well. And he pops up in front of my boat and he says, Ruth Ann, you knew better. How embarrassing. Never get out of your boat. However, the photos were worth it. The birds were worth it. I think that we're doing really well with the habitat here. I think we're really doing well, maintaining it, keeping it clean. It's still one of the cleanest bays in California. Hopefully it will stay that way. I'll be long gone, but I'm hoping it'll still be here.
Well, the Baywood Navy has been a really big part of our lives, and the involvement in everybody's care of the Bay and their interest in what's going on. We sort of watch over everybody. I think the Baywood Navy has sort of had a reputation. Concerts have been just wonderful and draw a lot of the community.
I'm not sure if I ever told you this. In 1949, when I first came here, my father drove in. He had seen ads in the LA Times for lots that were for sale for like $500, and he was curious. So we drove in on a family trip from the north, and we stopped right there, just about 50 yards from where I'm sitting. And I looked out at the bay and decided right then that this is where I wanted to end up. And all my older brothers and sisters had spent time in Newport Beach when it was not like it is now. And when I saw this, I was reminded, I imagined that this was what Newport Bay once was.
I guess I would like to see this area stay as pristine as possible, with as many people that move in, and that young people are interested in joining the Estuary program and taking the time to educate themselves about this project.
A friend had told me about Morro Bay. My parents lived in San Jose and I lived in Los Angeles. I was going home for Christmas and I decided, okay, I'll just run over to Morro Bay and take a look because I had never been here. So I pulled off 101, got on Highway 1, it's pouring rain, it's just December. And I got over to Morro Bay and didn't know how to get anywhere. So I got off the freeway on San Jacinto, which is a street that leads to a view of the rock when you get to the beach. And just as I got to the end of the street and turned back to look at the rock, the rain stopped, the sun came out, glittered on the wet rock, and it was almost as if God was pointing and saying, here. And a year later, I lived here, had a job, had a house, and I have never looked back. It was absolutely the best decision I ever made. And it was funny, I'm not a birder. They hired me because I'm not. I wouldn't want to go on all the trips. I could just work the festival. And at one of the welcoming speeches that I gave, I mentioned that I actually liked flamingos. And there was a flamingo that lived in Morro Bay for a while, for about 3 months. We figure he probably escaped from the Atascadero Zoo. His wings didn't get clipped enough, and so he came over here and played around with the egrets for several months and then flew away. Well, I told this story and said that, you know, my personal flamingos were plastic in my front yard. And the next day, somebody in the bird festival went out into the estuary and planted 2 plastic flamingos. Well, we have a bird board, and when everybody comes back at the end of the day, they put their sightings on the bird board. So that day, the sighting said, Flamingus plasticus. The 200 species that we get in January, and usually it's more than 200, we are usually one of the top 5 as far as the number of species available to see. So a lot of people will come here just to add to their bird list. So that's a wonderful thing too. Oh, we can hear the birds. Every so often, when there's a lot of fish in the water, we will have just these congregations of birds, cormorants, pelicans, and they're fishing, they're feeding, and it's wonderful. It's just fabulous to watch. My favorite thing about the marine life is watching the otters. It's amazing. If you go out by the rock, there are usually about a dozen otters out there, and when they have their babies, with your binoculars you can see the babies on the mama's bellies as they're floating around, and they're just fascinating to watch. Just the fact that you can walk out of your house, walk down to the beach, see all this wildlife, appreciate this beautiful world. It's all right here in Morro Bay.
I joined the Morro Bay Yacht Club in 1971. What we used to do is we would get in our boats and we would, at high tide, sail all the way back to Cuesta by the Sea. And we would take my kids, and there's the sand dunes back there. And we used to refer to it as the moonwalk. And the kids would go up to the top, and then they would take giant steps down the sand dune. And it was so nice. So anyhow, we always use the bay, but we give things back. The yacht club has, if you'll pardon the expression, the poop patrol. We go down to Tidelands Park, and they pick up trash, and of course everything else that's left down there, and that's where it gets its name, Poop Patrol. We also every year go over to the sand spit with bags and clean up the sand spit. We are pretty good stewards from that standpoint. We like to help out and make sure we have somebody giving us the raspberries, I think. What do I see as the future for Morro Bay? I really do believe that because we have achieved national prominence as a national estuary and a state estuary, that at least we are on the right track, that the right people know about us.
I became really excited about visiting Morro Bay to surf originally. That's what brought me here, and discovering all the things that the estuary offered. Well, I think one of the most exciting things working with the National Estuary Program and our Morro Bay offices here has been recently the work planting eelgrass, where we have hundreds of volunteers coming out over the course of a couple weeks, working with professionals to try to help restore the eelgrass beds, and seeing all the people coming out with a hands-on action type events, coming out and working, getting their hands in the cold water, wrapping bundles of estuary rhizomes together, passing those off to the snorkelers and the scuba divers to get those into areas that the estuary program's organized to be the most viable potential for restoration. I'm learning more about ways that we can actually live here, enjoy the estuary, and yet protect it. And seeing the community evolve, and people are learning more about harvesting rain and reducing stormwater runoff, bringing that onto their property and letting it infiltrate into the soil and be enjoyed by the plants, utilized by the plants, instead of running straight off into our most sacred piece of resource and watershed that we have here. And so one of the things that I'm excited about is seeing how the estuary program and the city are starting to collaborate more and support each other in that effort and the intent of keeping the estuary healthy on into the future, even knowing how many challenges we have ahead of us.
I teach people about the environment, and I work on community projects with the environment. Most of those projects here in Morro Bay are centered around the estuary and around the water. We have many people that I help get jobs in the bay. I personally have access to the bay through organizations and businesses like the National Estuary Program. A lot of the members we service have past substance abuse problems or homelessness or whatever, and we help them figure out a way to get out of that and become a part of society. One of the people I had in the last year, his name was Wild Bill. He was just enamored with the idea of going out in this canoe on the bay because he's never been on the ocean like that. Goes out in the bay, you know, having a great time, the sun's out, and I think he was calling out to the sea lions. We have a lot of sea lions in the estuary, and oftentimes I think he gets it in his mind that he wants to bond with animals. He has this thing with dogs, he's always trying to bond. So I think he was trying to bond with the sea lions, calling to them, splashing at them. Well, anyways, a bull sea lion took notice, came over to the canoe as he's calling to it and talking to it, and the sea lion came over and went under the canoe, knocking the canoe over, so they submerged Wild Bill into the water. So Wild Bill's flopping around in the water, the sea lion circling him, and I guess it's pretty rare, especially for here in Morro Bay. The sea lion actually went up onto Wild Bill and mounted him in the water and pressed him down below the water, almost like he was, maybe that's the way sea lions communicate, I don't know. Wild Bill definitely did not know why the sea lion was doing this, and his whole outlook changed in a moment, and all he wanted to do was get out of the estuary, get on land, and have respect for all things of nature from that moment on, because he was reminded very quickly that you can go from having a grand old time to being a man submerged in the water by a, you know, hundreds of pounds sea lion.
I'm from the Baywood Navy, and we have a lot of events that go on. One of the big events is the Boatsart concert that goes on right here on the pier in the summer on a high tide at noon. And we usually get about 60 or 70 boats coming down, and I hire bands or I play with my friends. And there's about an hour's worth of music, and we have the cookie boat, which is loaded with free cookies from the ladies of the Baywood Navy. And it's a grand time that everybody enjoys. And one of our events is we were going to put every boat we could get out in the bay, just past the pier, and we chartered a plane to come over and take a picture. Well, we got in the formation, and this lady was in this tippy canoe, and she really didn't know what to do. Of course, it turned over, and she started screaming, "Help, help, save me, I'm drowning, I can't swim." And there are 80 boats around her, and everybody looked at her, and with one voice, they all said, "Stand up!" And the water came up to about her middle, and covered with mud, but very ashamed, she just walked on the shore.
Being a paddler, my boats don't make much noise, you know, and I'm careful I don't try not to get close enough to really disturb them, but the harbor seals around the mouth of Chorro Creek when the tide goes out are neat, and then I've got a lot of shots lately of the white pelicans.
We have occasional runs of sardines or anchovies right here, right off the pier. And you can see my favorites are the brown pelicans, because the brown pelicans are the diving ones. And they circle like fighter planes in the air, and they spot something and boom, down and back up again.
And one of my favorite spots is right down in Shark Inlet, which is at the very, very bottom of the bay. If you get back in there in the morning, it is absolutely silent. The dunes block the waves, so you don't hear them. There is no sound from any highways or anything, and all you can hear is a few bird songs and the sound of your paddle. And it's magical to me.
Morro Bay is the first of the National Estuary programs that was actually started up with a local community nonprofit. Virtually all the other estuary programs that had come before in the nation were started up and run by government agencies. In this case, we had a local foundation, the Bay Foundation, and a very, very close relationship with the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Dave and I actually served. Dave was the original first program director of the National Estuary Program, and I was the first scientific director. And one of the issues we were really interested in was what was happening in the bay in terms of hydrology and flushing of the sediment out of the bay. And there's a hydrologic pinch point in the bay where the flows increase, and there's a lot of depth right there. So we decided it'd be important to characterize the flows in that particular location. So we spent an entire, I believe, night out in a dinghy with a flow meter.
We wanted to measure an entire tidal cycle by minute. So we were sitting in a small, ragged little boat that I had with some borrowed equipment to measure the flows in the salt water there. Some of the consulting firms that work for large companies around here have long been very helpful to us in studying the bay. They'll volunteer their personal time, and their companies will offer up equipment that normally wouldn't be able to be afforded by a bay this small. This place is still one of the smallest estuaries in the United States National Estuary Program.
I started working in this watershed because I was concerned about it. And then I moved to the watershed and began living here as well. And to be working on a system and living there and learning about it and making it my home, it just became so important for me. And there'd be times when I'd be flying home from some trip and fly over the Morros and just think, I don't know why I go anywhere, because where I live is so beautiful. And I still feel that way.
Indeed, coming into the valley again after we've been in Sacramento or some other state or Washington for a conference or whatever, it's always wonderful to come back into the watershed.